Good morning, everybody. This is Eric at Thomas Hills Ranch, and I wanted to have a little discussion about fencing. I talked with some folks at a goat camp that I went to, and one of the topics we talked about was fencing, and I was trying to tell them about how I was doing it. So I wanted to show you. It's better to show you than to tell you about it. So our property that we're on was formerly a cattle property, and so it's set up with a lot of this barbed wire fence. So the 5-wire barbed wire fence, and that makes up our perimeter, really. Sometimes they'll put a woven wire on the bottom, or actually woven wire between the ground and the second wire, and that's around the perimeter in some areas, but it seems like the different owners that owned this property had different ideas, and so, or a different decade when they repaired or did the fence. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to train our goats to a 2-wire system, and we're using poly braid along with some plastic stakes, and we're going to do that. We're going to rotate them around the property and basically rotational graze. And so this is our entry paddock right here. It was basically where they'd work the cattle, where they get the cattle on the trailer. As you can see, it was built pretty sturdy with railroad ties and wood, and then they added the cattle panel on the side. Now this has seen better days. Some of these railroad ties are rotted out, but that really doesn't affect what we're doing here, because my goats will never be able to challenge a railroad tie, even if it is rotted out. They're not that big. So what we're doing on the inside, this is initially where the new goats will go. So we have 24 goats now, and we got them in 2 different groups, and all of them have seen this paddock. And what I will do is I will outline this paddock with the poly braid. And so I'll make squares in here. Basically, the first goats we only had 6, so I split this in 2 with poly braid. And I get my power from high tensile wire. So I have high tensile wire coming from my charger, and it runs down here, and really all this is for power. I did put 2 here because initially I wanted to train them to 2 wires all the way around the property, and I thought about putting this around my perimeter fence, just to keep them in and keep them from challenging the fence. And as you saw earlier, it's also on the barbed wire up there, the 2 wires. And I may go to that eventually, but when I started laying it out, when I started seeing it in action, I decided against that. And so part of my property, I have put this high tensile wire all the way up to the top of my property, really where all the way to the back, and all it'll do is provide power for my rotational grazing. And the sole thing that will keep the goats in is that poly braid. The reason I have them starting in here is goats will get through the poly braid if they're hungry. If a goat is hungry enough, if a goat is scared, they will charge through it, and they will challenge the fence. In this area, if they challenge the fence, they're not going to go through it. They're going to hit this cattle panel, and it'll stop them if they go through it. I did offset a little bit because I knew they would get through, and actually one did get through the poly braid, and she was just between the poly braid and this cattle panel. Eventually she jumped back through, no problem. But overall, the goats did get shocked. They jumped back towards their buddies, and really they don't want to be away from their little tribe there. So it worked out really well. And once they were in here a couple of days, I think I left the 6 goats in here longer. When I got the next 18, there wasn't as much browse here, and so I only left them in here overnight. And then we come through here to our next area, which, like you saw, is the barbed wire on one side. Up at the top, there's more cattle panel. And on the left side, this was open, but I wanted to enclose it for this purpose, so I installed some welded wire fence, and again, just for the purpose of keeping them in. It's kind of a safety thing while they're being trained. And so I split this up for the 6 goats. I was able to split this up into 4 different paddocks. And the only thing in the center here keeping them in was the 2 wires of polybraid. And none of them challenged it. None of them got through. That goes for the 18 goats too. And eventually I had them all in here and they're really happy. I don't know if I have any before shots of this. I don't think I do, but man, they ate everything in here. All that's left are some twigs and sticks. We had a lot of grass in here, but we also had a lot of blackberry bushes. That's up here, and again, all that are left are sticks. Once they were done with their training in here, our training lasted, it was about a week, maybe a week and a half for the first goats we got. And then once I was confident they were not going to just tear off, then I introduced them to this back paddock here. Well, it's not really a paddock. It's probably about a 20-acre portion. And so if they get out of my polywire here, they're still inside my perimeter fence, which again is just mostly barbed wire, sometimes with some woven wire. I don't think they're going to go far. As you can see, they've got plenty of food here. So they have really no reason to run off to the neighbor's yard. So I'm not really worried about it, and I haven't noticed any issues yet. They've been out now, I think about 5 or 6 days. And you can see here are the reels that I'm using. And they're geared reels, which I highly recommend. I'm not recommending a product, I just recommend the geared reels because it's a lot. They get pretty heavy. There's about a 1/4 mile of fencing on each roll. So they get pretty heavy when you're winding it up. And I imagine if you're having to, I think it's a 3-to-1 gear. And I imagine if I had to work any harder, it would get very tiring. So this is the first area they were in. You can still see the dog cage there. I was training the dogs to to appreciate each other. Luna did not like Teddy, and I don't know if you'll see here, Teddy can be pretty annoying. He's still a puppy, so he likes jumping at her. But they finally learned to like each other, and they're now eating out of the same food bowl, and so I don't have to drag 2 of those shelters around every time I move, which is very nice. So here the goats are. They're on their 2nd paddock in this area. I was going to go downhill with them, but down here there is a wash, and we got some really heavy rain, which made it really boggy. Goats don't really like water. They had no problem. They were down here near that tree that's down. And they loved the grass down there, and it was a little wet, but they found dry areas to lay in. So it wasn't too bad of a problem, but I didn't want to chance it going any further down that way. So I went up here to the hill. I figured it'd be nice to clear off this hill a little bit. And as you can see, they can get right up to the wire there. And they'll literally graze up to the wire and have no issue. You can see she has some pretty big ears there, and I have seen her specifically. She'll graze a little close to the wire, and she'll just get a little snap on the ear and just kind of run back. It really just kind of wakes them up at this point, I think. It's powerful enough that they really don't want to challenge the fence. But really I have no issues with this system. I imagine you could keep them in with a single wire. I know Greg Judy, he's a great resource I've used, and he keeps his sheep in, I think, with a single wire. I know the Kerr Center here in Oklahoma, I've been helping them out, and they keep their cattle in with a single wire. But a cow is not going to really sneak under the wire. They will have their calves sneak under the wire, but again, the calves want to be with their mamas, so they don't go too far, and they can get them back in very easily. These goats are not... Well, they're getting used to me. They weren't really used to me at first. They were pretty wary of me. I couldn't get this close to them. But this is one of the first ones we got, and she's okay with me, along with some of her buddies here. But The goats, the more recent purchase we got are some older goats, and they're still a little wary of me. But again, I can walk around the pasture and they won't get scared of me enough to challenge the fence, like they haven't plowed through the fence or not. There was one night where, when we first got Luna, she tore through the area and either scared the goats enough that they knocked over the fence, or she knocked over the fence. I think, or maybe even both. But when I came in the morning, part of the fence was laying down on its side, and the goats were inside it though. They don't, and that happens when I move the goats too. I'll lay the fence down. They want to have nothing to do with that fence. They see that white wire laying on the ground and they don't want to cross it, even though they could easily jump over it. So if you have any questions on the fencing or what we're doing here, or if you want me to show you something else, this is my third or fourth take of the video. And every time I watched it, I would get seasick because I was turning the camera too quickly. So I'd appreciate any of your comments. I know I got a lot of friends out there who are much more experienced in videotaping stuff. And so just let me know what I can improve or what questions I can answer for you guys. Or if you want to see more of something else, like I've gotten several requests about Teddy here. So our big annoying ball of fluff. So anyway, Eric from Thomas Hills Ranch here signing off. Thanks for watching, and God bless.